The battlefield above the shattered colony of Siren's Reach was a nightmarish vision of destruction. Human ships, once symbols of innovation and pride, were now burning husks of metal. Their engines sputtered, and their hulls cracked like bones under the relentless barrage of the Excelnera. Every moment seemed like an eternity. The last few surviving human ships, battered and near incapacitation, floated like wounded animals in the vastness of space, struggling to maintain any semblance of order. Inside the command deck of the U.S. Valor, General Elias Rook gripped the railing, his knuckles white. His mind raced, calculating the odds of survival, odds that had dwindled to zero. The Excelnera had outclassed them in every way. Their ships were fast, armed with advanced weaponry that tore through human defenses like paper. And worst of all, they seemed to understand human tactics before humanity even began to apply them. The aliens had studied them, learned from them, and had adapted. In the face of such overwhelming superiority, Rook could feel the walls closing in. "General, we can't hold them off much longer." Captain Hannah Clark's voice cut through the chaos in the command room, her face a mask of exhaustion. "They're deploying another wave of fighters. We're down to just 30% operational strength, and we can't even make a dent in their fleet." Rook clenched his jaw. He had seen loss before, but this felt different. The Excelnera weren't just invaders. They were predators, intent on eradicating humanity, not merely conquering it. He glanced at the view screen, where a massive Excelnera flagship loomed, its weapons charging for another devastating assault. It was only a matter of time before Earth itself became the next target. The human resistance on Siren's Reach was the last significant holdout in this part of the galaxy, but the rest of humanity's colonies had already been obliterated, reduced to ashes, or subjugated under the aliens' iron fist. Rook's gaze fell to the war table, where a holographic map of the galaxy displayed the path of destruction the Excelnera had left in their wake. "Sir," Lieutenant Corbin's voice was thick with desperation, "we've received an emergency transmission from Earth. It's about the Omega Initiative." Rook's heart skipped a beat. The Omega Initiative, the last hope, the human experiment that had been kept under the tightest of security. For years, humanity's top scientists and military tacticians had been working on a program designed to create an elite force capable of taking the fight to the Excelnera. But it had been kept secret, an insurance policy that seemed pointless now. Humanity's best chance for survival wasn't supposed to be deployed under these circumstances. "The Omega Initiative," Rook repeated, his voice a mix of disbelief and curiosity. Corbin hesitated. "Yes, sir. The program was completed ahead of schedule. They're ready." Rook's mind whirled. The implications were staggering. Could these soldiers, these superhuman warriors, really turn the tide of the war? Could they save Earth? The idea of genetically enhanced soldiers, humans bred and trained to be the ultimate warriors, was not something Rook had ever believed in. But now, desperate times called for desperate measures. He turned toward Captain Clark. "Captain, prepare the ship for immediate departure. We're going to Earth." Clark's eyes widened. "But sir, we're not." "There's no time for debate. The Omega Initiative might be the only way to keep us from losing everything. We have to trust them." Rook watched as the final wave of enemy fighters closed in on their position. It was now or never. He had always believed that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to adapt, to improvise, and to fight with everything it had. But now, for the first time in his career, he wasn't sure if even that would be enough. Still, the flicker of hope that the Omega Initiative represented was all they had left. And as the Valor shifted into warp, leaving the destruction of Siren's Reach behind, Rook couldn't shake the feeling that the war was about to change forever. The U.S. Valor sliced through the cold vacuum of space, its engines humming softly as it made its way toward Earth. General Elias Rook stood alone on the observation deck, staring out at the endless stretch of stars. The galaxy, once full of promise and life, now seemed impossibly distant. Sirens' Reach had fallen. Soon, Earth would be the last bastion of human resistance. And yet, for the first time in a long while, there was a flicker of something in Rook's chest, a spark of hope. He had heard whispers about the Omega Initiative, rumors of its existence, a program to create a new breed of soldier, humanity's ultimate weapon. But the scope of it had always been classified, hidden from the public eye, even from the highest-ranking officers. Now, as they neared Earth's orbit, Rook was about to witness firsthand whether these soldiers were humanity's salvation or just another doomed experiment. When the Valor docked, the atmosphere on Earth was palpable, tinged with fear, but also anticipation. The air was thick with the weight of humanity's survival, and Rook knew that this was not just a mission to fight back. This was a test of humanity's very will to endure. In the depths of a secret military complex just outside of what remained of Washington, D.C., General Rook was introduced to the Omega Warriors for the first time. He entered the dark, high-tech facility with a sense of awe and hesitation, his mind racing with questions. A voice from the shadows broke the silence. General Rook. He turned sharply to find a tall figure stepping into the dim light, her sharp features and commanding presence unmistakable. Commander Lyra Cade, leader of the Omega Warriors. She was unlike anyone Rook had ever seen. Eyes that seemed to burn with purpose, a posture that spoke of endless training, and an aura of quiet confidence. "Commander," Rook said, giving a respectful nod. "I've heard a lot about you." Cade gave a small, knowing smile, though it was clear she wasn't one for pleasantries. "I don't believe you've heard the whole story, General. Come, I'll show you." She led him through the corridors of the facility, past high-security doors and armed guards, until they reached the training chambers. The room was enormous, designed to test every facet of human strength, intelligence, and agility. Inside, a group of soldiers was undergoing a brutal, seemingly endless series of exercises. Rook's eyes widened as he took in the sight. The soldiers weren't just physical specimens. They were machines of war, their movements sharp, precise, and fluid. They moved with a purpose that was eerily synchronized, as if each action had been honed through years of preparation. But it wasn't just their strength that caught Rook's attention. It was the way they thought. Every warrior in that room had a distinct presence, an intelligence that went far beyond just being well-trained. These soldiers didn't fight like regular humans. They'd fought with the instincts of predators, reading their enemy's next move before it even happened. "Impressive," Rook muttered under his breath. Cade stopped in front of a large glass panel, where one of the Omega Warriors, a tall man with black hair and a fierce gaze, was engaged in a one-on-one combat simulation. With every move, he tore through his opponent's defenses with terrifying speed, precision, and skill. The simulation wasn't even close to a fair fight, and it ended in seconds. Cade's gaze remained fixed on the warrior. "This is Varric, one of our finest. He was trained from the age of 10, under harsh conditions, to push the limits of what it means to be human. The Omega Initiative didn't just enhance physical strength. We've perfected combat tactics, decision-making, and emotional control. We're not just warriors. We're humanity's final hope." Rook was silent for a moment, watching Varric as he moved through the simulation. He was formidable, unstoppable, even. But a part of Rook still questioned whether even these super soldiers could turn the tide of a war as relentless as the one they faced. "I've seen power before, Commander," Rook said, his voice steady. "But power alone won't win this war. What will make the difference is human will, the ability to adapt, to outthink the enemy, to survive against all odds. Will these Omega Warriors be able to do that?" Cade's eyes locked with his, and for a brief moment, the weight of her response seemed to settle into the air between them. "We've been trained not just to fight, but to think like humans, because that's the one thing the XL-Nera never saw coming. They don't understand our drive to survive, General. Our ability to keep fighting, even when defeat is inevitable." Rook felt something stir in his chest. For the first time in months, He truly believed that humanity could win. The Omega warriors were not just soldiers. They were the embodiment of everything that had kept humanity going all these years. "Then let's put them to the test," Rook said, a fierce determination in his eyes. As Cade nodded, leading him further into the heart of the Omega Initiative, Rook couldn't shake the feeling that, despite the odds, humanity's greatest warriors had just entered the fray. And this time, victory would not be as impossible as it seemed. As the Omega warriors completed their final phase of preparation, the urgency of the situation was becoming clear. The XL Nera's forces were regrouping, preparing for a final assault that would annihilate what remained of human resistance. Earth had only a handful of defenses left, and none were enough to withstand the overwhelming might of the alien invaders. The time for conventional warfare had passed. The only way to stand a chance was to fight smart. And that was where the Omega warriors would make the difference. General Rook's mind raced as he stood in the war room with Commander Cade and her elite warriors. His usual strategic brilliance was tempered by a sense of disbelief that such a small group of enhanced soldiers could turn the tide of the war. The XL Nera had entire fleets at their disposal, but as he watched Cade brief her team, he saw something that couldn't be measured by ships or weapons: a will to fight, an unshakable determination that could cut through even the darkest odds. "The XL Nera think they have us cornered." Cade's voice cut through the tense silence in the room. "But they've forgotten one thing. We know how to fight dirty. Guerrilla tactics, surprise strikes, and exploiting their weaknesses. We won't give them a fair fight. We'll make them pay for every inch they take." Rook nodded. He had been in countless battles before, but this was different. The Omega warriors weren't just soldiers. They were symbols of humanity's resilience. Together, they would exploit the XL Nera's overconfidence, turning their advanced technology against them. The Omega warriors' first mission was to infiltrate and sabotage a massive XL Nera supply base located on the moon of a gas giant. The base was heavily guarded, but it was also critical to the enemy's war effort. If it fell, the XL Nera would lose their access to the resources needed to fuel their fleets. Rook's plan was simple but risky. Send the Omega warriors in with nothing but their wits, their weapons, and their ability to outsmart the enemy. Lyra Cade's team was an ensemble of exceptional warriors, each chosen for their unique abilities. Varric, the close combat specialist, would lead the assault team. Celine, a brilliant hacker and technician, would take down the security systems, and Ren, the sniper, would cover them from a distance, picking off any XL Nera sentries who got too close. The rest of the Omega team was equally skilled, working seamlessly together like a well-oiled machine. The operation began with a daring drop from orbit. The warriors descended in a series of stealth pods, hitting the moon's surface before the XL Nera had time to react. As they hit the ground, the team split into two groups, one to destroy the supply caches, the other to disable the base's communication systems. The XL Nera forces had been expecting a direct assault, but they weren't ready for this. The Omega warriors moved with silent precision, taking out sentries and guards before they could even sound an alarm. Ren's sniper shots were silent but deadly, dropping enemy patrols with uncanny accuracy. Celine hacked into the XL Nera's security network, causing their surveillance drones to malfunction and crash into each other. Meanwhile, Varric led the charge through the heart of the base, cutting through XL Nera soldiers with brutal efficiency. But the true brilliance of the plan came when Cade made her move. She and her team planted a series of explosives in key locations, rigging the supply base's fuel reactors to blow. When the countdown hit 0, the explosions rocked the moon, sending shockwaves through the XL Nera's defenses. The warriors quickly retreated, leaving chaos in their wake. The supply base was in ruins, and the XL Nera were left scrambling to recover. As they made their escape, Rook watched the live feed from the Valor. The destruction of the XL Nera base had been swift and decisive, and the warriors' retreat was flawless. For a brief moment, He allowed himself to believe that humanity had a fighting chance. But as the team regrouped and prepared to return to Earth, a chilling message came through from the Omega Warriors' comms unit. "General," Cade's voice was cold. "We've done more than cripple their supply lines. We've also triggered a beacon. The Excelnera know we're here. They're sending reinforcements. It's only a matter of time before they launch a counterattack." Rook's pulse quickened. This was the moment of truth. The Omega Warriors had proven themselves capable of striking back, but now they would face the full wrath of the Excelnera. The next move would decide everything. "We've bought ourselves some time," Rook said, his voice steady. "Now we need to make sure they know we won't go down without a fight. Prepare for the next phase." The battle was far from over. But as the Omega Warriors returned to Earth, Rook knew one thing for certain. Humanity had just found its fiercest warriors, and they would stop at nothing to protect their home. The U.S. Valor had barely made it back to Earth's orbit when the first shockwave hit. The Excelnera were not a species that took losses lightly, and they responded with unparalleled vengeance. Within hours, the remnants of the human fleet were under siege, and reinforcements from the Excelnera Empire were heading toward Earth with terrifying speed. General Elias Rook paced across the command deck, his face set in grim determination. The Omega Warriors' victory on the moon had been a turning point, but that victory had also caught the attention of the Excelnera, who were now coming for Earth with everything they had. A sense of urgency hung thick in the air as officers scrambled to prepare defenses, and reports of incoming alien fleets continued to flood in. "General, we've received confirmation from our reconnaissance satellites," Captain Clark said, breaking Rook's thoughts. "The Excelnera are mustering a full-scale invasion force. They've already launched multiple dreadnoughts and warships. At this rate, Earth will be surrounded within the next 3 hours." Rook's mind raced. The Earth's defenses were nowhere near ready for this type of onslaught. The few remaining human ships could not stand up to the firepower of the Excelnera's fleet. Earth itself was vulnerable. If they didn't act fast, humanity's last stronghold would be reduced to rubble. "We have one shot at this," Rook said, turning toward Commander Cade, who had been watching the tactical screen with a laser-focused expression. "I need you to lead a team into the heart of their fleet." Cade met his gaze, her eyes narrowing with quiet understanding. "You want us to infiltrate and strike their command ship, don't you? The flagship?" Rook nodded. "It's our only chance to throw them off balance. If we take down their flagship, we can disrupt their command structure. They'll have to regroup. We might buy ourselves enough time to fortify Earth's defenses." Cade didn't hesitate. "We'll need to go in fast and silent. No room for error." The Omega Warriors embarked on their most dangerous mission yet. They would board the Excelnera flagship, a gargantuan vessel that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. The mission was pure sabotage: disable the flagship's command center, disrupt communications, and cause as much chaos as possible. The risks were monumental. If they failed, they wouldn't just lose the battle, they would lose the war. Under the cover of night, the Omega Warriors deployed from a stealth ship, slipping past the Excelnera's outer defenses with precision. As they neared the flagship, the true scale of their target became apparent. The flagship's hull was made of an alien metal that glowed with an eerie, otherworldly blue light. It was heavily armored and protected by fleets of smaller ships, but the Omega Warriors' strategy wasn't to engage directly. Their approach was about precision, one strike that would ripple through the Excelnera's entire war machine. Commander Cade led the charge, her team following her every movement with silent coordination. They infiltrated the flagship's lower levels, moving with deadly efficiency through darkened corridors and past heavily armed Excelnera guards. Selim, the hacker, took control of the flagship's surveillance systems, plunging the ship into temporary darkness as they reached their target, an area known as the Nexus Core, where the ship's central operations were controlled. The strike was swift. Varric and Ren provided cover, while Cade and Celine planted the explosives at key structural points, designed to collapse the Nexus core and disable its vital systems. The countdown began, but just as they were about to extract, alarms rang out, signaling that their presence had been discovered. Hail! Nara soldiers flooded the corridors, and the quiet was shattered by the violent roar of combat. Cade's voice rang through the comms. "We're not leaving until this mission is complete. Hold your ground." Varric charged into the fray, his fists moving like lightning, tearing through the advancing alien soldiers with brutal efficiency. Ren's sniper shots rang out, picking off enemies one by one from a distance. But the real battle had only just begun. The XL Nara flagship's defenses were much tougher than expected, and now that the alarms had been triggered, they were fighting a full-on counterattack. Yet the Omega warriors held their ground, using their superior combat tactics and teamwork to slowly but surely overwhelm the enemies in their path. At the heart of the flagship, just as the countdown neared zero, Cade set the final explosives and motioned for the team to fall back. They retreated through the corridors, narrowly avoiding blasts and firefights. The weight of their mission was immense. Failure would mean the destruction of their team, and possibly the end of humanity's hope. The explosion was catastrophic. The XL Nara flagship's command center buckled under the sheer force of the Omega warriors' sabotage, sending shockwaves through the alien fleet. The flagship's communications were severed and chaos spread through the XL Nara ranks. The loss of their flagship threw the invading forces into disarray, and many of the smaller ships began retreating in confusion. When the Omega warriors finally made it back to their extraction point, Rook watched the live feed from Earth's command center, stunned by the magnitude of the victory. The flagship was crippled, and the XL Nara were faltering. For the first time since the war began, Rook saw the fear on the XL Nara's faces. Humanity's victory had shattered their invincibility. "We did it," Cade's voice came over the comms, a rare note of satisfaction creeping into her tone. "They've lost their nerve. The fight isn't over, but we've proven one thing. We can win." Rook stood silently, his heart pounding in his chest. The war was far from over, but humanity had just dealt the XL Nara their first major loss, and that was a victory worth more than any battlefield triumph. The Omega warriors had changed the course of the war. And now, with Earth's defenses ready for the next wave, humanity had hope for the first time in years. The XL Nara would not break them. Not now. Not ever. The victory over the XL Nara flagship had reverberated through the war-torn remnants of Earth. For the first time in years, the enemy appeared vulnerable, shaken by their own unexpected losses. The Omega warriors had delivered a crushing blow, but it was only one battle in a larger war, and the XL Nara were nothing if not relentless. However, the chaos they had sown in the enemy fleet had given Earth a precious window, a chance to regroup, fortify, and strike back. General Elias Rook stood before a holographic map of Earth, watching as the last of humanity's fleet gathered in orbit. The bulk of their defensive forces were small, battered ships, but the Omega warriors' successful sabotage had crippled the XL Nara command structure, and the human fleet had taken advantage of the disarray to rebuild its presence. "This is our moment," Rook said, turning toward the gathered officers. "We've shown the XL Nara that we're not going to just roll over. We've got them on the ropes, but we need to keep up the pressure. If we fall back now, they'll regroup, and the next assault could be far worse." Captain Clark nodded, her face grim. "Our fleet's ready, General, but we're still outnumbered. Even with the XL Nara scrambling, they'll regroup and bring reinforcements faster than we can prepare. We need more time." "That's where the Omega warriors come in," Rook replied. His voice carried the weight of their successes and the burden of what still lay ahead. "Commander Cade's team has already proven they can turn the tide with precision strikes. Now it's time for their most daring mission yet. We hit them where they don't expect it, their homeworld." The Omega warriors had always known their role was to be the sharp end of humanity's spear. Now, They were tasked with something even more dangerous: infiltrating the Excelnera's home planet, an uncharted, heavily guarded world deep within enemy territory, and delivering a crippling blow. The mission was to sabotage the Excelnera's core infrastructure, particularly their shipyards and fleet assembly yards, which were producing the warships that had decimated human colonies across the galaxy. Without those resources, the enemy's ability to wage war would be severely diminished. Cade stood with her team in the briefing room, her eyes scanning the map that Rook had provided. This isn't just a mission of sabotage. This is about making the Excelnera realize they can't just crush us at will. We hit their homeworld, we break their economy, and we show them that humanity is capable of striking where it hurts. Varric, standing next to her, cracked his knuckles, a smile tugging at his lips. Sounds like my kind of mission. Celine, always calm but focused, added, the enemy's security systems are advanced, but not invincible. We'll need to go deep, disable their defenses, and then hit them hard. Once we do, we extract quickly and disappear before they know what hit them. I'll provide sniper support, Ren added, his voice steady. We'll need to keep their forces off balance as much as possible. The team knew the stakes. This mission wasn't just about victory. It was about ensuring humanity's survival. Failure would mean their complete annihilation. The Omega warriors boarded a stealth transport and made their way toward the heart of Excelnera space. Their destination was a heavily guarded moon orbiting the Excelnera homeworld, an industrial site where the enemy's ships were built. The planet itself was a fortress, teeming with defenses, but the Omega warriors had been trained to bypass those, silent as shadows, deadly as storms. As they approached the moon, the transport dropped out of stealth mode, immediately diving into a dense cloud of debris and asteroids. The maneuver was designed to throw off enemy sensors, providing just enough cover to slip past the outer defenses. But this would be their only chance. If they were detected, there would be no escaping. After a tense hour of maneuvering through the debris field, they landed on the moon's surface, just outside a massive shipyard. The Omega warriors disembarked, their movements swift and precise. They split into teams, each group assigned a specific target: sabotage the shipyard's main assembly lines, disable the planetary defenses, and destroy the energy core that powered the whole operation. The mission was clear: cripple their production, disrupt their command structure, and leave the Excelnera in chaos. Celine hacked into the base's security network, briefly plunging the facility into darkness. In that moment of darkness, Varric and the others pushed forward, using the cover of night to eliminate sentries before they could alert the rest of the facility. Ren, from his hidden perch, picked off any enemies trying to regroup, his shots accurate and silent. The Omega warriors worked in perfect unison, cutting through the base's defenses like a scalpel through flesh. Every move was planned, every action deliberate. They were not just soldiers, they were predators, and the Excelnera were their prey. But as they neared their objective, things began to go wrong. A sudden explosion rattled the base as Excelnera reinforcements arrived, dropping from the sky in sleek dropships. The Omega warriors had expected a fight, but not one of this scale. Within moments, the facility was swarming with enemy forces, and the noise of battle filled the air. "We've overstayed our welcome," Cade said through clenched teeth. "Plant the charges and get out. Now." Celine set the final explosive charges, and the Omega team made a hasty retreat, firing as they ran. The shipyard was a massive structure, and they had no intention of sticking around to watch their work. As the charges went off, sending shockwaves through the facility, the base erupted in a storm of fire and destruction. But as the Omega warriors made their way to the extraction point, a pulse of light cut through the sky, and the ground beneath them trembled. The Excelnera weren't just mad, they were out for blood. "We've made them angry," Cade muttered as the warriors ran, the base behind them collapsing into a fiery inferno. And yet, for the first time since the war began, the Excelnera were no longer sure of their victory. The Omega warriors had just delivered another crushing blow, and humanity's will to fight had only grown stronger. The destruction of the Excelnera shipyards was nothing short of catastrophic for the alien empire. For weeks, reports poured in from across the galaxy, showing that the once mighty war machine of the Excelnera was grinding to a halt. Their fleet was scattered, their production lines in shambles, and their morale at an all-time low. Humanity had delivered blow after blow, and the Excelnera were finally beginning to feel the weight of their arrogance. But as much as the Omega warriors had shifted the balance of the war, the Excelnera were far from finished. They were a resilient species, and they would not let the loss of a single shipyard, or even their flagship, stop them from annihilating the last bastion of human resistance. General Rook sat in the command center aboard the Valor, his face shadowed with exhaustion. The Excelnera had regrouped, and the retaliation was swift. In the last week alone, 3 major human colonies had been destroyed. Cities burned. Millions had died. Rook's mind constantly raced, trying to formulate the next strategy, but each victory seemed to come at an unbearable cost. "General," Captain Clark's voice broke through his thoughts. "We've intercepted a new communication from the Excelnera. They're mobilizing everything they have for one final assault. It's not just a fleet. This time, they're sending everything. We have hours at most before their full force arrives at Earth." Rook stared at the holographic display. The Excelnera fleet, now fully coordinated and reinvigorated, was heading straight for Earth. Their warships were massive, their numbers overwhelming. If humanity was going to survive this final assault, they would need more than just the Omega warriors. They would need every resource they had left. "We'll need to use everything," Rook said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "Every ship, every weapon, every last drop of human ingenuity." Meanwhile, Commander Cade and the Omega warriors were already preparing for their next mission, a direct assault on the Excelnera's primary invasion fleet. Intelligence suggested that the Excelnera were preparing a superweapon, a devastating energy weapon capable of rendering Earth's planetary defenses useless in a single strike. If they couldn't disable it, humanity's last hope would be shattered in an instant. "Time is running out," Cade said as she gathered her team in the briefing room. Her gaze was hard, focused, but there was something else behind it. Resolve, even in the face of the inevitable. "Let's go over the plan again," she continued, her voice steady. "We need to hit their command ship, disable the superweapon, and destroy their primary fleet's flagship. This is our only shot to turn the tide. We'll have to fight our way through their defenses to get close enough, but once we do, we plant the charges and leave. Fast, clean, and effective." Varric, ever the fighter, grinned. "Sounds like a challenge. I'm ready." Celine looked up from her datapad. "We'll need to hack into their security systems. If we're detected too early, it'll all be over before we can even reach the command ship." Ren spoke up, his voice as steady as ever. "I'll cover you from the shadows. One shot, one kill." Cade nodded, a sharp smile briefly breaking through her stoic demeanor. "Good. Let's show them what humanity is made of." As the Omega warriors embarked on their most dangerous mission yet, the final battle for Earth was beginning to unfold. The Excelnera fleet emerged from hyperspace in a stunning display of sheer firepower, their ships already positioning themselves in the vast void of space, preparing for a full-scale planetary assault. On Earth, humanity's last defenses were poised and ready. The battered fleet, led by the Valor, braced for impact, their weapons trained on the incoming Excelnera ships. The battle was sure to be the most devastating yet. There was no room for error. If Earth was going to survive, humanity needed a miracle. The Omega warrior's ship, an advanced stealth shuttle, slipped past the first waves of Excelnera ships, drawing closer to the heart of their invasion fleet. The tension was unbearable, each second stretching into eternity. Inside the shuttle, Cade's team was silent, each member focused on the task ahead. "We're in range," Celine said quietly, tapping a few keys on her console. I'm in. Her fingers flew over the keys, bypassing layers of encrypted security systems. The massive XL command ship loomed ahead of them, a colossal structure bristling with weaponry and shields. It was the heart of the enemy fleet, the very symbol of their power. "We've got access," Celine said, her voice laced with a hint of triumph. "Let's move." The shuttle veered sharply, docking silently with the command ship. The Omega warriors disembarked, weapons in hand, moving with lethal grace through the ship's corridors. The security systems were momentarily disabled, but the enemy would not remain blind for long. Varric led the charge, tearing through the first group of Excelnera soldiers with brutal efficiency. The rest of the team followed close behind, moving quickly and decisively. They had no time to waste. Every minute spent inside the command ship meant that the Excelnera would grow more aware of their presence. As they neared the control room, Cade glanced back at her team. "Prepare for heavy resistance. Once we hit the core, we're planting the charges and getting out. Fast." The next few minutes were chaos. Tizale. Nara soldiers flooded the halls, guns blazing, but the Omega warriors were ready. They fought like shadows, each strike swift and devastating, each move calculated for maximum efficiency. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Finally, they reached the control room, the heart of the Excelnera fleet. Cade's hand hovered over the detonator. "This is it," she said quietly. "For humanity." And with that, the countdown began. The countdown echoed in Cade's earpiece, a reminder that time was running out. The Omega warriors stood at the heart of the Excelnera command ship, their weapons raised, waiting for the right moment to strike. Cade's pulse quickened. They had one chance to destroy the superweapon and cripple the entire Excelnera invasion fleet. Failure was not an option. 3 minutes until detonation. Celine's voice broke through the tension. "We need to move. Now." Cade nodded, signaling her team to proceed. They had reached the heart of the Excelnera command ship, a vast, sterile chamber filled with alien technology, humming with power. At its center was the superweapon, an enormous energy cannon capable of obliterating Earth's planetary defenses in a single blast. It was everything the Excelnera had worked for, everything they were willing to sacrifice millions of lives to protect. "We're not letting them use it," Cade said, her voice sharp. "Ren, take out the snipers. Varric, you're with me. Celine, disable the core systems." The plan was simple, but the stakes were higher than ever before. If they failed to disable the superweapon, the battle for Earth would be over before it truly began. The fate of humanity rested in their hands. Ren's sniper rifle cracked as he took out the first sentry, an Excelnera sharpshooter perched above the control room's central platform. The blast echoed through the chamber, but the precision of Ren's shot left no time for retaliation. He moved swiftly, positioning himself in the shadows, targeting any Excelnera that tried to approach. Varric, the unstoppable force of the Omega warriors, charged forward, his heavy boots pounding against the metallic floor. He tore through enemy lines with brutal efficiency, clearing the way for Cade and the rest of the team. His enhanced strength allowed him to easily dispatch even the most formidable Excelnera warriors, his combat skills honed over countless battles. The Excelnera were fast, but they weren't prepared for someone like Varric, whose strikes were lethal and unyielding. "Keep pushing," Cade shouted, her eyes scanning the room for the superweapon's core. "We're almost there." Celine was already hard at work, her fingers flying over a holographic control pad that flickered with streams of alien code. She bypassed their security systems in seconds, sending the entire command center into a momentary blackout. The alarms shrieked to life, flashing red as emergency systems tried to reset. But Celine was faster. Within moments, she had disabled the superweapon's power source, rendering the deadly cannon inert. "There, the power's down," Celine called, her voice tinged with relief. "The weapon is offline, but I've triggered an emergency lockdown. We need to move." Cade's heart skipped a beat. They had done it. The superweapon, the Excelnera's ultimate weapon, was no longer a threat. But as the alarms blared louder, Cade knew that they had just bought Earth a moment of peace, not a guarantee. The Excelnera would be furious, and the fight wasn't over yet. They still needed to destroy the command ship, disrupt the fleet, and escape. "Plant the charges," Cade ordered. The Omega warriors moved swiftly through the control room, setting explosives at critical points. As they worked, the Excelnera began to regroup, their forces pouring into the command center, intent on stopping the intruders. It was a desperate move, but one driven by pure survival instinct. The aliens would not go down without a fight. Varric and Cade held the line, their weapons firing in unison, cutting down the advancing Excelnera. Varric moved like a blur, his fists smashing into the enemies that dared to come too close. Cade, ever precise, fired with deadly accuracy, picking off the soldiers trying to flank them. But as the last charges were set, the Omega warriors found themselves surrounded. The weight of the alien assault hit them like a tidal wave. Cade's mind raced. If they didn't escape soon, they would be trapped. "Charges are set. We're done here," Celine shouted over the comms. "Let's go." With the explosives primed, the team sprinted toward their extraction point. Ren's sniper shots covered their retreat, keeping the Excelnera from closing in. Every step they took felt like an eternity. The command ship was shaking, the energy from the planted explosives already reverberating through its hull. "Move," Cade barked as they reached the docking bay. The Omega warriors piled into their transport shuttle, their faces grim but determined. Cade turned to the others, her voice calm but filled with urgency. "We've done it. Let's get out of here now." Just as the shuttle lifted off, a deafening explosion rocked the command ship, and the massive vessel began to crumble around them. The Excelnera flagship, once a symbol of their might, was now a burning wreck, the destruction of their most prized asset sending shockwaves across the galaxy. But as the shuttle soared away from the wreckage, the Omega warriors knew that their fight wasn't over. They had won a crucial battle, but the war was far from finished. The Excelnera were not defeated. Not yet. "We've just shown them we can win," Cade said, her voice steady as the stars stretched out before them. "Now we finish what we started." As the shuttle rocketed toward Earth, the Omega warriors knew that they had given humanity a fighting chance. The fate of the galaxy was still uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity was no longer a species to be underestimated. The final fight was just beginning. The remnants of the Excelnera command ship burned in the distance, a fireball of shattered metal and crumbling hopes. The Omega warriors' shuttle zipped through space, leaving the wreckage behind as the stars beckoned them toward Earth. The mission had been a success, but the price was high, and the battle wasn't over. The Excelnera were a wounded beast, but they were still dangerous. Cade sat in the shuttle's cockpit, her gaze fixed on the swirling darkness ahead, the weight of the war still pressing on her shoulders. The mission had been successful, but their victory had come at a cost. They had crippled the Excelnera's most powerful weapon, destroyed their command center, and thrown their fleet into disarray. But it had only bought Earth precious time. The Excelnera weren't finished yet. As the shuttle broke through the atmosphere and entered Earth's orbit, Cade's comms crackled to life. "Commander Cade, this is General Rook." Rook's voice rang out, sharp and clear. "Report in. What's the status of the mission?" "We've disabled their superweapon and destroyed their flagship, General," Cade replied, her voice steady but tinged with exhaustion. "But we've made enemies of them now. The Excelnera will retaliate, and we've only delayed the inevitable. They'll come again. We'll need to be ready." Rook's voice softened, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I know, Cade, but you've given us the breathing room we needed. The humans on Earth are rallying. We're rebuilding our defenses, and the fleet is mobilizing for one final stand. You've made them bleed, and we're going to finish this fight. The shuttle's descent was smooth, the view of Earth's atmosphere greeting them with the glow of the rising sun. The planet was scared, cities in ruins, but there was still hope. Humanity was no longer on the brink of extinction. They had tasted victory, and they had tasted it because of the sacrifices of the Omega Warriors. They had shown that humanity could not be broken. Back at Earth's command center, Rook watched the incoming shuttle with a mixture of anticipation and fear. The Omega Warriors had returned, but the war was far from over. The XL Nera would regroup, rebuild, and come again with everything they had left. But now, humanity had something they had never had before: confidence. They had proved they could win. And more importantly, they had proved they could fight back. The shuttle touched down with a soft thud on the makeshift landing pad, and the Omega Warriors emerged. The last few months had left their faces grim, but their eyes were steely with determination. They had done the impossible, but they knew the real fight was just beginning. Cade stepped off the shuttle, her boots heavy against the cracked earth. Her team followed, each of them silent but resolute. Varric's muscles were still taut from the battle, while Ren's stoic face betrayed nothing of the hardships they had endured. Celine walked with purpose, her fingers brushing across the data pad as she scanned through the latest intel. Humanity had won a battle, but the war for their survival was far from over. "We did it," Celine said, her voice barely a whisper. Cade nodded, her eyes scanning the horizon. "We've taken down their flagship. We've hit them hard. But we haven't finished the job yet. We need to keep pushing forward." General Rook approached, his face grim but with a spark of pride in his eyes. "You've given us a chance, Commander, but we still have a long way to go. The XL Nera are down, but they're not out. They'll come for Earth with everything they have. We have to be ready." Cade met his gaze. "We will be." In the days that followed, humanity rallied like never before. The losses were staggering, but the will to survive was stronger than any weapon the XL Nera could wield. The last remnants of Earth's military forces, bolstered by the Omega Warriors and their legendary skills, worked together to prepare for the next wave. It wasn't just about holding their ground anymore. It was about reclaiming what was theirs. The battle had become personal. The XL Nera had threatened to wipe out humanity, but they had underestimated the tenacity of the human spirit. Cade stood before a holographic map of the solar system, her hands resting on the cold table. Her team stood behind her, their eyes focused on the vast expanse of space. The Omega Warriors had made history, but the future was uncertain. The XL Nera weren't going to stop. They had to be ready for whatever came next. "They'll come again," Cade said, her voice low. "But this time, we'll be waiting for them." Celine stepped forward, a determined look on her face. "We've learned from every victory and every loss. The next time we fight smarter, stronger." Varric cracked his knuckles, a grin spreading across his face. "I say we hit them where it hurts. They won't know what hit them." Ren nodded silently. "They've underestimated us before. Let's make sure they never do again." The Omega Warriors, humanity's fiercest defenders, knew the final chapter of this war had yet to be written. But as long as they stood together, the XL Nera would never succeed. Not while they were alive. Not while humanity still had breath in its lungs.